Yes, and it seems strange for a man of my vintage interest to try and explain RoboCop as if it's a thing that's not a universal part of human experience. It's like trying to explain how water's wet. It's been part of the background radiation of my life for, well, not quite as long as I can remember, but close enough, and it's almost unfathomable that it is not thus for all of us. However, I suppose time makes fools of us all, and maybe there's some people who only know the not awful, but certainly nowhere near as good remake of 2014. Gosh, 2014. It surprised me there, that, and I wrote that. How time flies. Yes. Then let me give you some potted recaps of the 1987 original, which is set in Detroit in one of those 80s near futures where we seem to be a half hour away from crime gangs running rampant on the streets. See also Predator 2. And the Popo are overwhelmed, and the government does the only thing it could reasonably do to solve this, which is to bring in a corporation to clean up the mess, with their ultimate aim being to demolish Detroit and build a shining city on a hill with none of them poors getting in the way of their fancy haircuts. So when Ronnie Cox's Dick Jones, a senior exec at the Omni Consumer Products' policing project, the semi-mobile gun platform Ed 209, goes quite spectacularly and messily wrong, Miguel Ferrera's ambitious Bob Morton seizes the opportunity to get his RoboCop project greenlit, earning him plaudits with his boss, but Dick Jones's enmity, and that's a list that Bob will soon find out that is unwise to be on. But RoboCop needs a head to drive the agreed-upon total body prosthesis, which comes in the shape of Peter Weller's Alex Murphy, a cop recently killed by the rampant, mayhem-causing Boddicker gang run by, well, who else? Kurtwood Smith's Clarence Boddicker, later revealed to be in cahoots with Dick Jones to further OCP's schemes. How deliciously evil. So, then, the soul of the film, I suppose, is about the mind-wiped RoboCop's mind slowly unwiping, and with help from his old partner, Nancy Allen's Anne Lewis, getting revenge for the Alex Murphy he's gradually reconstructing. Oh, and the ludicrous levels of violence, often involving gruesome fates for Rob Bottin's special effects creations. Poor Emile. Wikipedia tells me that the effects were excessively violent because Verhoeven believed it made the scenes funnier, and whether Verhoeven actually believed that or not, it's undeniably true. It might not necessarily be absolutely true that they don't make action films like this these days, but they certainly don't make anything like enough of them, and this is a very fun romp that never gets old. In fact, as corporations encroach ever more in all aspects of life, it's just getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. Yay, dystopia! Recommended, 100%.
Yeah, this is one of those films where like the word classic can genuinely apply to it, I feel. Mm-hmm. It's iconic, it's distinctive, it's memorable. Holds up pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
And some of the special effects look a bit ropey now. Stop motion in particular is something that tends to look bad. That said, I did and still do find Ed 209 to be genuinely scary, despite looking like a microphone on legs, which is presumably the inspiration or like the source of the parts for the model, because it's quite clearly a microphone. But there's something about the very sort of implacable nature of it, and its countdown of the number of seconds you have to comply that meant that I always found Ed 209 decidedly unsettling.
Yeah, yeah.
And it still has that power to a degree, which is quite nice to find out as a wizened old man.
It certainly does quite well, and it kind of counterpoints the general trend of science fiction films. Is again repeating what some other people have said that are far cleverer than me, but it would generally have like humans almost acting like robots in the face of insufferable odds, and this is like the exact opposite. It's a robot becoming more human, and actually being affected and traumatized by what's happened to him. So it's a very different sort of concept of what could well have been a very simple, basic, straightforward action film with just the shooting, and would probably still have been relatively enjoyable for all that, but certainly doesn't have anything like they wouldn't have had anything like the emotional punch that RoboCop as it stands now does. So yeah, all fits very well with it seems.
You talk of that sort of more conventional sci-fi thing with just the robots and stuff too, which is what all of the sequels to Paul Verhoeven's stuff tends to have. Like this always seems to miss the point entirely.
Yeah.
The Starship Troopers sequels, the RoboCop sequels. So anything like that's in there that's satirical or making some sort of commentary on society or stuff is never there in the sequels. Like, why are you doing this? You've just missed the point entirely, you spectacular fools.
Yes.
Whereas this one, like, it's full of satire and has the same sort of news stories and stuff that you get to see in Starship Troopers and in Total Recall as well. And then, it's clearly a satire of corporate culture and of police brutality and things.
Yeah.
Although there are little hints there that suggest that, like, it's not all to that sort of side of things, because there's a section in here, the scene when RoboCop goes to take out the guy who's holding the mayor hostage. And he very clearly drives his car straight through the police tape, and it's like, yeah, so I do get the feeling he's suggesting, like, he's just, like, cutting through, like, red tape and bureaucracy and stuff. It doesn't seem subtle to me, that.
No.
So it's like, says, like, sometimes, like, this, again, it's not saying pro police brutality, but it's like sometimes, like, as well, that there may be better ways to do things with direct action.
Yes.
I was quite amused. Now, I don't think I'd remembered the line specifically. It's a while. No, actually, no, it's probably not that long since I last watched RoboCop. But just struck by, and actually, I can't believe it wasn't the case in 1987, but struck by the irony of the line where Dick Jones says that OCP is moving into traditionally non-profit enterprises such as hospitals and prisons, which nowadays are very big business.
Yes.
Disturbingly, particularly the prisons thing. But yeah, the satire works really well. It also works very well simply as a sci-fi action film. But yeah, it's got considerably more of a brain in it than, again, the sequels and so many other films in that sort of general genre. It's sort of more practical effects, like some of the effects look bad, but some of it still looks pretty good, particularly, and I think it's quite notable on the Blu-ray releases of, like, how good this RoboCop suit still looks.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely crucial that suit not look ridiculous. And in the extra definition provided by a Blu-ray transfer, that you can see, for instance, around the chin strap, that it looks like it's just been handmade. Which sort of works simply as that, like, he's a prototype.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be mass produced, but also it's sort of come around full circle in that nowadays it looks like it's something that would have been 3D printed. Like, actually, that works. That's what it would be now.
Yeah.
And while it does look a bit like it's painted plastic, like metallic painted plastic, because it's metallic painted plastic, but it always sort of looked like that. At the same time, it doesn't look like a silly Halloween costume or something. It does actually stand up, even in high definition. And while it does, again, this is an older film, so it was perhaps slightly less common when it was made, but it does fall into that weird trap of all robots in films having to have ridiculous Foley put on them with lots of solo noise and whirring motors and things.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they would be so loud when they moved, but okay. But beyond that, the actual RoboCop outfit and movements, they work quite well.
Yeah.
And Peter Weller does a fantastic job in them. If there's a special effect other than the stop motion puppetry of Ed 209 that doesn't work well, it's Dick Jones's arms as he falls out of the window. Why are they double the length? What happened? Every time I watch that, it's like, why? Why? It's like, it's bad blue screen. Okay, I don't mind that. It probably still doesn't look as bad as another film from the same year, The Untouchables, because the blue screen when Frank Nitty's falling out the window, and that is possibly the worst I've ever seen. But it's like, why are his arms suddenly twice the length? What was the thinking there? They must have noticed, surely.
Yeah, it's just perspective effects, that's all it is.
Yeah, but just his arms.
Yes. Just his arms.
What else is a couple of points I want to make about this? Just that, and I noticed it particularly watching so many of these Paul Verhoeven films in such close proximity, is that he really doesn't like to spell stuff out for his audience. And I really appreciated that. You'll see some bit of technology, maybe in an early scene that comes back to later, but it's never like focused on too much, and certainly nobody in the film is explaining something. It's like, you've seen enough of it to understand it. annoyingly, I forgot to write down whichever thing that particularly struck me in RoboCop. But in Total Recall, for instance, it's the scanner that shows guns.
Yeah.
You see it once, just enough to understand how it works and why it's significant later, without having to like really spell stuff out. And there's quite a few things in that, even in Hollow Man, for all its faults, where there's like sort of a setup of something that like gives the audience with some sort of respect. Like, as long as you're paying attention, you'll get that.
Yeah.
RoboCop's full of it, which I appreciate. And another good thing about RoboCop is that it's got good villains.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Dick Jones is sort of your typical sleazy corporate executive, but he's kind of menacing.
Mm.
And there's a real swagger to the way that Kurtwood Smith plays Clarence Boddicker, and both of those go a long way to making it a much more entertaining film, because it's just like some sort of miserable megalomaniac, or, I don't know, some sort of lesser Bond villain type thing. It's like, it'd be really boring, but no, the real swagger, particularly to Clarence Boddicker.
Yeah.
Some really funny lines and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, some real swagger to them, yeah.
Yeah. So again, obviously again, it's possibly the best roles for some of those people.
Yeah.
And it's just a thoroughly bloody entertaining film.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I perhaps don't like, it is one character played by Jesse Goins, I think. Is that right? Joe, who has this laugh who's basically like Salacious Crumb. And it is the most unpleasant thing ever. It's like you're just waiting for him to get shot. I mean, he's a bad guy, so that's fine, but you're just waiting for him to be shot in the face, because that laugh, oh God, that laugh. And then it's Ken Pratt's, she's basically the only woman in it, if you don't count the prostitutes that are with Miguel Ferrer when Clarence Boddicker comes to visit. And Nancy Allen's great. Yes. Nancy Allen.
Fly, Bobby.
Just give me my phone call.
Could be here all night.
Yes. Yeah. You've totally thrown me off track there. Yeah, Nancy Allen, who obviously being human is more vulnerable than RoboCop, but she's set up like quite quickly. It's like she's beating up a couple of larger male assailants when you first see her. And that she's like, without having to like spell out and just be kind of, oh, she's really strong for women. No, you just like, she's completely no nonsense, Lewis, and that she would be, you know, a worthy partner to RoboCop later is shown there without having to, you know, hang a lantern on it so much. So there's actually quite a lot of craft and a lot of subtlety, which is not what you'd expect from a film about a man who's been turned into a cyborg and had a silly plastic suit put on him.
Yeah.
Again, unfortunately, the sequels kind of missed those points. But yeah, it's a classic film. It really stands up. It's just good to know.
Yeah. My only enduring negative is I think it's one of the two films in this list that I wound up spending an inordinate amount of money on I think, American DVD copy for, and then they released a better UK one that I could have got for much cheaper. But
that was the original Criterion Collection version, Scott, yes, because you, Craig, and I all got a ridiculously expensive version that turned out to be 4:3 letterboxed.
Yes.
Another proper anamorphic transfer, 40 letterboxed, and it was gash.
Yes.
And like MGM released one here very soon after, which was a considerably better transfer and anamorphic. So yes, the Criterion Collection can do wrong, and it's not just by including certain films in their catalogue that really ought not to be there. Yes, that's one of my few negatives too, is that I think I still have that, because honestly I spent so much money on it that I can't quite bring myself to get rid of it. Yes. I don't know what I'd ever do with it, because I have the Blu-ray of it, which looks great, but it's, damn you MGM and Criterion.